Whoa. Wow. Ooh, good morning, good morning, good morning. Experiences. Part 2. So, yesterday we talked about from the age of 6 months old until 7. Right? So if I remember correctly, the last thing we talked about was the day that I called the police. Right? When I was a kid, I called the police and told them that we were being hurt by the people there, and they never came. Or they came, but they didn't do anything. First and foremost, like I said yesterday, this series is not for kids. This is not for children in any way. This is not made for children. Children should not be around while you are watching this. Right? But you're the parent, so really it's up to you. But I'm advising you that probably not a good idea. 6:39 right now. I'm out doing some volunteer work. Start at 7:30. It's gonna be great. Some outreach. Right. So listen. Now that the kids are out of the way, hopefully. So 7 years old, man. I call the police and they're nowhere to be found. Well, they get there, they're found, but they don't help us. So already, right, this traumatic experience that happens to me as a child ingrains in me that the police are not reliable. But see, that's only one experience of many more to come. So what ends up happening is I stay at that foster home for another year. And, while I'm there, I keep trying to figure out ways that I can leave. Right? I keep telling teachers and other adults and everything, but it just seems like the more I speak up about it, the more they deem me a problem child. The more they say that, oh, he's making stuff up, Vincent, that's not okay, you can get people in trouble, you shouldn't say those things. I'm 8 years old, and I remember me and my brother did something. I'm trying to remember what we did on this particular occasion. So this is one of those rare occasions, right? Because we didn't eat a lot, we weren't fed a lot. But on this occasion, we had gotten, I don't know how they got it, but the foster parents had gotten these big old boxes of family-sized Doritos. Excuse me, I'm trying to wake up still. These big old boxes of family-sized Doritos, and you had the Cool Ranch and you had the nacho cheese. And we both liked Cool Ranch, right? My brother was obsessed with it, right? He was obsessed with the Cool Ranch. And like I said, we didn't fight much, but on this particular occasion, we did fight. We fought because it was the last bag of Cool Ranch. And it's, when I think about it now, it's actually quite messed up. Yeah, it's pretty messed up because we actually didn't get any of those chips until it got down to the last bag. And then they gave us a bag to share with each other. And Willie wanted them for himself, and I wanted them for myself, and we were hungry for one. Hunger will make you do some really strange things. And so he wanted them for himself. I wanted them for myself. We fought over them. And they broke us up. And the foster mom, Miss McHenry, took Willie into the kitchen, or into the hallway, and she grabbed a bottle of Lysol off of a bookshelf, and she hit him in the head with it, like this, right on the top of the head. And I remember the force of it, and I remember seeing his eyes glaze over, right? And he was dizzy and he was disoriented, and blood just started going down his head. And I remember thinking he was gonna die. I'm like, man, my brother's gonna die. This was a turning point at this placement. See, what happened with that is he didn't die. Like, she cleaned him up, and like she always did. She was a registered nurse, and so she knew first aid pretty well, and she used that to her advantage. Being that she was beating us all the time, she covering up scars and fixing wounds and whatnot. But like the vision of him bleeding from his head like that, it would take years for that to leave me. But the next day, like, I devised this plan to run away. I didn't know much about running away. I didn't know what it would look like, but I made up my mind that I didn't want to be there, and that I was going to leave, and that there was nothing anybody was going to do to stop me. I'm 8 years old, small little kid. And so the next day I ran away. I jumped the fence in our backyard, and I ran down a hill. Didn't take anything with me. I ran down the hill, and I found myself in this field of seasonal migrant workers. And they were working, and I'm kicking it, and there's kids that are there my age, and so we're playing soccer, and we're running around, and we're having a good old time. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it because this was the first real time that I actually got to be a child. Right? I wasn't stuck cleaning somebody's house for hours on end. I wasn't locked in a pantry or hiding under the bed in fear. Right? Like, I was happy. But evening came, and when the evening came, the workers started to leave. And one of the little boys that I had been playing soccer with, like, his mom was there, and they were the last two. And I remember sitting at this bench. It was like a picnic bench. And there was a little booth there, right? Workers went in. I don't know what they did. It had like a phone in it and stuff, table. And right next to the picnic bench. And I'm sitting there, and the little boy's like, "Are you going to go home?" And I was like, "No." And he was like, "Why?" And I said, "Because they're hurting us. I'm never going back there." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Where are you going to go?" And I was like, "I think I'm just going to stay here." And he was like, "You can't stay here." And I was like, "Well, can I go with you guys?" And he was like, "I'll ask my mom." So he went to his mom and said something. I couldn't hear him. And she looked, and you could see the concern in her eyes. Then she walked over to me and she said, "Mijo, where do you live?" And I said, I don't live anywhere. And she said, "You have to live somewhere. Where are your parents at?" And I said, "I don't know my parents." And she said, well, you can't stay out here. It's going to get cold. And I said, well, can I go with you guys? And she was like, no, mijo, you can't go with us. And she was like, I'm going to call somebody for help. And I was like, okay. I didn't know she was going to call the police. Like, I didn't know at the time that when someone said they're going to call somebody for help, that it meant they were going to call the police. So she called the police. Union City police show up, sitting on the bench, you know, gets out. It's the same cop that had come to the house when I called 911. And as soon as he saw me, like, it was like automatically, like there was nothing that I could do or say that could convince him that I hadn't done anything wrong. I'm a child. I'm 8 years old. And he walks up and he said, Vincent, how you doing? And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. Right? And he said, well, what's the problem? And I said, I told you they're hurting us. And I don't want to be there. I don't want to go back there. And he's like, Vincent, didn't we talk about you making stuff up? You shouldn't do that. That's not nice. You can get people in trouble doing that. Nobody's going to believe you if you keep making up stories. And I was like, I'm not making up stories. This Hispanic woman, this Mexican woman is standing next to me with her son. And she's kind of holding him against her. And she's looking at me and she's looking at the cop and she's looking at me and she's looking at the cop. And like she looks at me and like I look at her and like I'm trying to plead with her. I'm like, please don't make me go with him. He's going to take me back. They keep hurting us. And the cop goes to grab me and he grabs a hold of my shirt and he's like, come on, Vincent, get in the car. You have to go home. And I'm like, don't touch me. Like, and I jump up. I run a little bit down the road and there's big tractor tire marks that have water in the grooves, right? And it's muddy. It's watery. It's muddy. And I jump in and I rolled around in it. And the cops are behind me and I hear him go, oh, shit. And I look at the woman, right? And I see a smile come on her face because she realizes what I'm doing. She walks over to me, right? And she says, mijo, I'm not going to let them take you anywhere. She said, I'm not going to let them take you anywhere until somebody else comes to help you. She was like, you can trust me. And I was like, okay. But I laid there. See, because I didn't know much, but I knew how particular people were with their cars because Mr. and Miss McHenry and everybody else's car I had ever been in had told me to make sure that I don't get anything on the floor or dirty it up. Don't be playing in that dirt because you're not getting in my car dirty. And so she went back over to the cop and she said, you know, I would feel more comfortable if you would call somebody else. And she's saying this in broken English. Right. And he's like, well, he's not getting in my car like that now. So I'm just going to call CPS or social services or child services, whatever. CPS at the time. So he gets on his radio. He's talking to whoever he's talking to. And about 20 minutes pass by and I'm still laying in this puddle. Every once in a while, I'll roll around a little bit so it gets all over me more. And another car pulls in. And this woman gets out the car. And she comes up to me and she goes, are you Vincent? And I said, yeah. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, he wants to take me back, and I don't want to go back to that place because they keep hurting us. And she said, well, what are they doing to you? Right? And the cop is standing there. The Hispanic woman is standing there. Right? She has her son with her. A couple other workers that have been in the field, they've, kind of made their way over, and they're looking on. And I said, they keep touching us, and they keep hitting us, and it really hurts. And I started begging, like, please don't make me go back there. And the cop is like, we've gotten calls before. He's called us and made false claims, and we saw him, and his foster mother said, his guardian said that him and his brother fight, and he has a lot of mental health issues, so we should take this into account. And he's like trying to make a case for me to go back to this place. I'm an 8-year-old child that keeps telling you that they're hurting me. Why the fuck do you want to send me back? Why? So it's less paperwork? See, because what I learned is that some people are lazy. They don't want to do no paperwork. This cop was a prime example. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done when you take custody of a child, right? Then have to give that custody to somebody else. He didn't want to do that. So the social worker's like, you know what? Like, the Hispanic woman is standing there and she's crying because she feels like what I'm saying. She knows it, like that I'm not lying, and she wants to see me get some help. And she's watching as these people aren't helping, and she's telling everyone else in Spanish, like, they don't want to help him. He says that they're hurting them, right? And like, they're looking on with concern. And my heart is breaking because I'm positive that this woman is going to take me back to this place. And I don't know this woman. She's not a cop. I don't know who she is. I've never seen her in my life. So she's like, oh, we're going to call Miss McHenry. And so they call Miss McHenry, and another 15 minutes pass, and Miss McHenry comes down, right? The cop is talking to the social worker that had showed up, and he's telling her, like, he's not getting in my car. You can put him in your car, right? Like, I'm an animal. Like, police squad cars don't get cleaned out regularly after having suspects in the back of them. And Miss McHenry gets down there, and I remember her pulling in. And Willie was in the back seat. The window was down about halfway. The child safety locks were always on, so he couldn't get out. He poked his head out the window, and he's like, Vince, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm not going back. And he was like, why not? And I said, come on, man. They keep hurting us. Like, we don't have to be there anymore. And Miss McHenry was like, Vincent, what did I say about making stuff up? She said, come on, hon. Just get in the car. We'll go home, get a bath, get you something to eat. You look cold. She was playing the role as if everything was fine, as if she ever gave me a bath and set me down and gave me a warm meal. In all the years I had been there. Her attitude completely changed when she got around the cops and other people of authority. What really messed me up the most was the social worker said, Vincent claims that you guys have been hurting him, so we have some concerns. She said, his episodes, Miss McHenry was like, his episodes have become more often, and she said he has these delusions of people hurting him, and he makes things up often. Him and Willie fight, and like, I could see that the social worker didn't believe her. So the social worker came over to me, and she leaned down and she said, listen, hun, I'm not going to let you go anywhere with her. She said, you don't have to go anywhere with her, and you never have to go back there if you don't want to. And like, I felt this pressure leave my chest, and I was like, oh my goodness. So like, I turned to Willie, and like, I got up out the puddle and walked over to the car, and I'm looking up, and I'm like, come on, let's go. And he's like, go where? I said, well, she said we don't have to be here anymore. We could go somewhere else. Like, she'll take us somewhere nice. And Willie was like, why? And I said, because they keep hurting us. And it's like, be careful what you wish for, because like, you never know what's gonna happen, right? I remember 8 years old, like standing, being wet and covered in mud and begging my brother to go with me because he's the only family that I knew. But when I said, let's go, we don't have to be there anymore because they're hurting us, he said, I don't know what you're talking about. They're not hurting us. I don't want to go anywhere. And I was like, come on. Like, we don't have to be here no more. And he was like, I don't want to go. But I couldn't stay. I've never had my heart break so much in my whole life. Like, the only family that I knew, my hero, my protector, my best friend. Like, in that moment, I learned what it was to become conditioned. What it looks like when you just want to be loved and you don't want to, like, feel the feeling of, like, hurt and trauma. How you cover it up, how you, like, just bottle it. And he didn't want to go. And, like, I had to make a decision. Like, am I going to stay in this place because I want to be with my brother? Or am I just going to leave? And I made a decision to leave, and we were separated. See, some people may not understand, like, how hard that is to have to make a decision like that at that age. Like, for that bond to be broken, for the only family that I knew to just be gone. It would be years before I would see him again. And by the time I would see him again, he would have changed so drastically that, like, he wouldn't have been the same person. See, I acknowledge that our experiences mold us. They make us who we are. They can have a positive or a negative effect in our lives. Like, I think about that experience, and, like, I think about how after that, like, I found it really, really hard to trust. It really, really hard to love, because the person that I loved the most and the person that I trusted the most abandoned me. I blamed him when we were young because, like, I didn't have anybody else to blame, and I never told him. I never told him. And so, like, as I got older, like, it became increasingly hard for me to trust people, because that, coupled with other experiences that I had, wouldn't allow me to. And so think about it today, and I pray for him because I hope that he can find his way. He's still around. He's incarcerated right now. That's a lot of our stories, though. Jails, institutions, and degradation. And so we both went through this constant cycle of just doing drugs and committing crime and doing other stuff, and running the streets, and just a continuous cycle. And the unfortunate part of it is that not everyone makes it out of that. Not everyone makes it out of that. We would hope that people could make it out, but some people don't. And see, like, you never know why somebody gets in some of the stuff they do. Right? Like, maybe it's hard to believe or to understand or to fathom how, like, some people can be born addicted to mind-altering, mood-altering substances. It can be hard to grasp that, like, my body was screaming for all of these substances when I had never even taken a hit to begin with. See, some of us think that people that are on the streets, that are getting loaded, that are getting high and living in tents, like, they're just all criminals and rapists and monsters. One lady said, they're all rapists, they're all murderers, and they're all monsters, and we're all scared to leave our houses. I'm willing to bet that the woman who made this comment on social media doesn't actually live in the flatlands, that she lives in the hills somewhere, that she's one of the people that speeds so fast through these areas that they actually kill people. One person sped through one of these areas one day down here in Oakland so fast that they hit a dog, swerved after they hit the dog, jumped the curb, ran over 3 tents, and killed 2 people. And kept going. Why? Because they wanted to speed through, because they didn't want to look at what it's become. They don't want to see it. But because they didn't want to see it, and they were in such a rush to get back to the posh lifestyle that they have, right? They speed through these areas with no regards for anyone, right? And end up killing people. You never know anybody's experience. And that's what we're going to keep talking about. Because there are a lot of youth on the street right now. And the comment shouldn't be, they're just dope fiends or drug addicts, right? The question should be, what is it that brought this person to be here, where they're at right now? Because I'm willing to bet any amount of money that if someone is between the age of 15 and 26, that they ended up on the street because something happened. Well, obviously something happened, right? There are a lot of LGBTQ youth that have been kicked out and are on the street because their family doesn't accept their lifestyle choices. Unfortunately, we see this far too often. There are youth on the street that were in placements like I was when I was a kid, right? That, unfortunately, they were being hurt, and so they took to the streets because it felt safer. And see, that's what we're going to get into tomorrow. Why do people take to the streets? Because it feels safer, right? Why does it feel safer for some people to be on the streets with no rules and no one to direct them than it is for some of us to be inside? And I'm going to share my experience about that with you guys tomorrow, because that'd be the next chapter, right? I'll tell you what ended up happening when I left this foster home. I appreciate y'all lending an ear. As I said before, feel free to ask questions. Like, subscribe, check us out. I'm going to post every single day. I'm watching this guy over here getting ready for the workday. Sun came up. I didn't watch the sunrise since I've been sitting here crying. Stay tuned. Part 3 coming tomorrow. Love y'all.